with a couple of additions, I believe, from outside that I already have, from planning and development. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion. Moved by Councillor Tessier, seconded by Councillor Walsh, that the agenda be accepted as presented. Those in favour? Contrary minded, motion is carried. First thing then on the agenda would be the minutes and action report of the meeting of May 17th. We'll accept a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Moved by Councillor Akers, seconded by Councillor Stoyles. Are there any errors or omissions to be referenced at this time for the meeting of May 17th? Errors or omissions? Going once. Going twice. None?
You need to be on your game. We have former speaker.
Boy, and I'm frightened to death. You notice how officious I'm being here, because any second at all I expect him to jump up and say order. Order, please. Right? We're going to call the question on accepting the minutes as presented from the meeting of May 17th. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Business arising then from the minutes of May 17th. Any business arising from the meeting of May 17th? I'm not hearing any. So we will move along. The next item we have, Council, is proclamations, presentations. We do have one today, and we've had the honor of doing this in the past, once a year, and we look forward to having the opportunity to do it again. I want to welcome to our chamber today the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Brain Injury Association, familiar to us all, Mr. Tom Lush, who I think most of us have recognized as a former Speaker of the House of Assembly and member of the House for a long, long time, and it's a pleasure to have him here in our chamber with us today. And joining him as a member of the board for the Brain Injury Association, Mr. Bill Tapper, and we want to welcome you both, gentlemen. And I know that Mr. Lush, after I read the proclamation into the record, will come forward and tell us a little bit about their plans for the month of June. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the Newfoundland and Labrador Brain Injury Association is a non-profit advocacy organization which strives to improve the quality of life for survivors, their families, and friends, and whereas brain injury continues to be a major killer and disabler of people under the age of 35 and over the age of 65, and whereas 90% of traumatic brain injuries can be prevented, and whereas the major goals of the NLBIA are to advocate, to educate, to legislate, to prevent, and to rehabilitate, and whereas the Newfoundland and Labrador Brain Injury Association provides programs and services, including the following: support groups for families and survivors, information, counseling and referral, weekly recreation groups, advocacy and volunteer opportunities. And whereas we emphasize that the brain is the control center of the entire body, and hence the importance of preserving and protecting it, let brain wellness, therefore, be our immediate objective this month and this summer. Therefore be it resolved that I, Randy Sims, Mayor of the City of Mount Pearl, do hereby proclaim the month of June to be National Brain Injury Awareness Month in the City of Mount Pearl. And having read that proclamation and signed it, I'm going to invite Mr. Lush to come forward. And I need you to come up here, Tom, if you would. The way we're doing this these days, because we're broadcast live on the internet these days, and we're webcast, I'm going to need you to use this little microphone that we hold here. So we rearrange things in the chamber, and I'd ask you and invite you to address council and tell us your plans for Brain Injury Awareness Month for the month of June 2011.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's a real pleasure to be here. It gives me another opportunity to help spread awareness and to talk about prevention of brain injury. So we thank you for doing this for us, and doing this proclamation, Your Worship, is a tremendous thing that you do for organizations, charitable organizations throughout your area, and it's greatly appreciated. Brain injury, or June, is Brain Injury Awareness Month right throughout the country, right throughout Canada, and all the provinces are doing what we're doing during the month of June. We have planned 3 major activities that we'd like to tell you about. And the first one is this coming Saturday, June the 4th, to be held in the Battery Hotel. It's a public information session, the theme of which is concussion and other brain injury, a very timely topic. And it should be a very interesting session. We have two marvelous speakers. We have a young brain injury survivor in the person of Nick Mercer, who is a policy analyst and a blogger, and very, very much interested in the promotion of anything to do with brain wellness. Our second speaker, a very popular neurosurgeon in this part of the world, and that is Dr. Maroon. And anybody who's ever had anything wrong with their brain, they're always very privileged to be able to get a person of Dr. Maroon's caliber and reputation. That's item number one. Item number two, or event number two, is our walk for brain wellness. And brain wellness is an issue that we like to promote, and that walk is going to be on June 26th, the last Sunday afternoon, when we thought most people are having a leisurely afternoon, and particularly if it's a nice afternoon, they'd like to come and walk around Kitty Vitty. I can tell you we're changing that walk next year. You've got a very strong advocate from Mount Pearl on our board, and she's away this weekend with her son, Randy, Marina White. And Marina's been, only the last week or so, she's been pushing me to move that away from Kitty Vitty. And I said, well, sort of, it's almost a tradition. This is our fourth year now, but had you told me that earlier, we would have looked at that surely. So I can tell you, I think that next year we're going to be moving west, and Mount Pearl has some beautiful walkways.
Come in and walk around Powers Pond.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's that's our second event, the Brain Injury Walk for Wellness, and it's our fourth annual walk. The third event, and this one won't be occurring in the month of June, but it's still an event that's designed to create brain injury awareness, and it's the Stephen Lush Golf Classic. And that's my son, by the way, and it's got nothing to do with me in a way. Let's very quickly say that you're familiar with how students have reunions, and my son graduated in 1985, and when the class was having that reunion, and he graduated from PwC, when they were having that reunion, one of his very close friends, who became a golf pro, wanted to do something for Stephen, so he did a poll among the class, the graduating class, and they came up with having a golf tournament in his honor. And it was so successful that we've been doing it ever since. So this is I think, number 7, as I've indicated. You can get information on any of these events by calling the Brain Injury Association, which is 579-3070. And you can get information on any of those events. And you're invited to attend all 3, or any one of the 3, or any 2 of the 3. And we invite you to under 3 classifications. 1, we invite you as an observer. 2, we invite you as a participant. And 3, which is very important, we invite you as a volunteer, because we're short of volunteers like just about any organization. So, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and allowing us to spread a little more our objectives of certainly creating awareness and brain injury prevention. Just wanted to say that I won't say the percentage, but a large percentage of brain injury is caused by accidents. Hence, they are preventable. Hence, our objective of brain injury prevention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lush, very much. We want to offer our best wishes to you and wish you the best with all of the events you've got planned. I've had the honor of unlike the non-athletic group of counselors you see around here, I do every now and again get out and hit a golf ball. And I've had the honor of playing in the tournament, in Stevens' tournament, and I'll look forward to hopefully getting to do that again.
Thank you.
And maybe some of the others would like to come and join me, though it would be funny to watch, but you can come and join me. Thank you very much, Mr. Lush. We appreciate it, and good luck with all of the plans of the organization for this coming June. Anybody with a comment?
I'd like to.
Deputy Mayor?
I would like to make a comment, Your Worship. I think it's a great initiative, and I was just thinking last week, as the weather's getting nicer, you're starting to see a lot of young people out on their pedal bikes, on their rollerblades, on their skateboards, and the number of young people that I see, Your Worship, without helmets. I find that disturbing. So it's a great opportunity now for us just to remind parents that if their children are engaged in these activities. We also have a new skateboard park that's being designed down at the Team Gushu. And I can't emphasize enough, because I did have, my older boy had a head injury when he was age 2 and spent, some time in the Janeway and bled through the air. So I know, personally about the impacts of that and how scary it can be. So again, I just want to take this time to, again, congratulate you folks on this great initiative, and just as a reminder to parents and to young people that helmets do work. And as Mr. Lush said, it's accidents. You don't think they're going to happen, but that's why you got to plan for them. So I just wanted to make that point, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Tessier?
It's not just the children that have a lesson to learn when it comes to brain injury. I play hockey and had the opportunity.
Well, you had to prove you were an athlete, hey?
Well, I can't have it said that you're an athlete. No, I'm not.
She's registered in hockey.
But there was a time when I did suffer a concussion, and when I saw the doctor, the first thing the doctor asked me, she asked me 2 things: how old is your helmet, and do you wear a mouth guard? And apparently both. There's new technology now with helmets that can help prevent concussion. So if you have an old helmet that somebody may have used 15, 20 years ago, but it still looks fine, it may not be. There's much better technology now. And again, the mouth guard, who knew? But a mouth guard, they said, can prevent a concussion in some cases. So again, that's your awareness piece. So it's not just the kids that have a lesson to learn here, it's the adults.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lush. Thank you, Mr. Tapper. We really appreciate it, and we know you don't want to have to suffer through this meeting. So you're free to go. The prison door is open. Thank you so much for coming in today. There, and that's what it's like, brother. That's what it's like. Okay, all except for the good folks in the media who hang out there. Thanks again. We're ready to move along. We have one piece of correspondence to deal with today. This is a letter that comes to us from Minister Darren King, who is the minister responsible for Newfoundland Labrador housing. He is talking about, in this letter, the investment that they are making in housing expenditures in this budget, some $19,035,000, and he recognizes, which I appreciate, I have to say, that we have been working hand in hand with Len Sims and officials at Newfoundland and Labrador Housing on an affordable seniors housing initiative for the city of Mount Pearl, and that to some degree is recognized here, and we appreciate the letter. I table it with council. Is there any comment that anybody wishes to make at this point in time? Hearing none, we are going to move on. We'll start with committee reports, the first of which is our Public Works Committee. Councillor Tessier, if you would.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on our agenda is our residents were advised that we will be holding a household hazardous waste collection day on Saturday, June 11th. It's going to take place at 59 Clyde Avenue from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. So we're encouraging Mount Pearl residents to drop off any household hazardous waste that they have in their residence, and certainly samples of household hazardous waste which should not go in your regular garbage. What could come here are things like oils and paints and gas and solvents and things like that that should not go in household garbage. Empty paint cans don't actually qualify. They're empty, so they can go in your regular garbage. But if you have paint if you have tins of paint that are old with still some paint left in it, that's certainly something that can qualify for this particular day. But if anybody wants to see a full list of the items that they can drop off, they are on our website. They're listed there. All you got to do is key in household hazardous waste on the little question bar there, and it'll pop right up there for you.
Councillor Tessier, are we doing any form of advance promotion on this? We're putting something in Mount Pearl Matters and that sort of thing?
I don't know if we are. I know it is on the website
folks?
at this point. It is on the website.
It would be good. It would be good if we looked at finding a way to do a little awareness. We got to do
Maybe
something.
we'll look at, we'll have to
Yeah.
look at it and see about doing a couple of PSAs, just to let the residents know.
Okay, yeah.
Worship, I have a comment on that,
Thank you,
please.
Councillor Lane. Go right
Yeah,
ahead.
Your Worship, I can't let the opportunity pass without bringing that whole issue to light once again, because I do think it was a mistake that was made. Again, this ties into the Eastern Waste Management, and of course, once the landfill was established in Robin Hood Bay, what I say, without consultation from the member municipalities, thus not making it a true regional landfill site, in my view. One of the decisions that was made was that household hazardous waste could now be dropped off, I think for 6 months of the year, directly at Robin Hood Bay.
That is correct.
As a result of that, though, in addition to household hazardous waste, of course, you can also drop off, I think, construction materials and so on. For 6 months of the year, that is going to cost the taxpayers of the City of Mount Pearl, beyond the fact that our landfill fees have doubled in terms of tonnage. On top of that, there was a $135,000 charge for this. Now, we all are aware that they since made
It's
some
actually 132.
changes. They've rolled it into one fee,
Yeah.
but it's still going to cost us over $100,000. I think around $120,000 in additional fees for residents to have the ability to drive down to Robin Hood Bay with a can of paint and so on. Obviously, I think we've discussed this, that we don't feel that this is an adequate service and that people would avail of it, and that all the wastes are going to end up, inevitably, going into a garbage bag. So as a result of that, of course, what we decided to do as a council is that over and above this additional cost, we are now going to have our own household hazardous waste day, which is going to cost us an additional, I'm not sure what the number is, but there is a significant cost.
I think it's
Mr. Lush
11,
knows
I
the
think it's
number.
11,000, but I
$11,000, is it? How
No,
much?
I'm
More
not
than
sure the
that?
number anymore.
Council approved an overrun of $20,000.
$20,000.
That includes the actual waste collection, which is the contractor's $13,000, and logistics for our own people and advertising brings it to
So
20.
20 grand.
Okay, so the bottom line is this is going to cost us, in addition to the additional fees that we're paying for Robin Hood Bay for this drop-off, which arguably is not going to get used too often, I don't think. Now we're going to have to pay an additional $20,000, $30,000 to have our own household hazardous waste day, which used to be subsidized by the MMSB. Of course, now the MMSB have pulled their funding as well because that site is in place. And I think the MMSB have made a real mistake there. If they're really interested in cleaning up the environment, this was a program that worked. They have lots of money. They could be putting it into this and helping subsidize these programs. We used to have 2 a year. Now we're going to be forced to have just 1 a year, and we're going to be smacked with another big bill. So I'm glad we're doing it. I totally support it. But I think that the way it was done without consultation could have been done better. And I'm just, it's too bad it worked out that way. But I do support doing it nonetheless.
Yeah, I think there has to be a
Thank you, Your
recognition. I think there's a recognition of human behavior and the need to get this stuff out of the environment, and making it as convenient as possible for residents is what this household hazardous waste day is all about. When you've only got to go up to Clyde Avenue to get rid of stuff, and you can isolate a day to do it if we promote it and encourage people to do so. I think they'll, as part of their regular spring cleanup, isolate this stuff and get it out of their environment. And that's what we want them to do. It's going to cost us that extra amount of money, no doubt about that, in total about $20,000. I believe, though, that in the end it's worth the initiative, because I think the majority of what we will collect that day, an awful lot of it might have ended up in regular garbage and in the landfill, which is what we're paying all this money to avoid happening. So I'd rather pay the extra and have success than not and have failure on our hands. Anyway, Councillor Tessier. Anybody else with a comment on any of this? I'm sorry. Councillor Tessier. Oh, Mr. Lush.
I want to, I guess, say a little good light of the MMSB. They did allow us, they did tender for us, so we did get to take advantage of that, and they're supporting us a little in advertising. So
Yeah, we did get some support.
They are helping us on some level.
Yeah, they did give us some support.
Well,
Councillor
another
Tessier.
argument to that we can make again towards the household hazardous waste now being expected to be delivered at Robin Hood Bay is if we're looking at an environmental footprint, if we're looking at our own carbon footprint, for all the cars that will only have to drive to Clyde Avenue to drop off their household hazardous waste, we expected all those cars to drive all the way to Robin Hood Bay
back.
to drop off their household hazardous waste. I mean, you know, when you break it down, the system that's in place right now is probably not the most efficient.
Here, we hear you loud and clear. But that was for information purposes, no
That's it.
motion required. Next item.
We received a letter from the Royal Canadian Legion requesting permission to hold their annual Battle of Beaumont Hamel ceremonies on Friday, July 1st. Of course, we're recommending that we write Mr. Frank Scurry, the parade ceremonies coordinator, with approval for that parade and wreath-laying ceremony as per the route that's outlined in their letter. And of course, the city wants to take this opportunity, as always, to acknowledge the price that was paid by all those Newfoundlanders who fought in Beaumont Hamel, and of course most people did not answer roll call the next morning, and I think it's very important that we recognize that on July 1st, and I'm certain that all the members of council that are available will certainly be there as well.
That is a motion.
It is.
Moved
I do
and
so
seconded
accept it.
by Councillor Walsh. All questions, comments? All in favor? Contrary-minded, motion carried.
Okay, the city is going to remind residents that household garbage placed to the curb for collection must be covered from April 1st to November 30th. We're having an issue with people who are not covering their garbage, and as a result, the spring cleanup is becoming very arduous, and it's very difficult to stay on top of it. So as a result, we are going to be enforcing fines. We are going to be enforcing our regulations for residents who don't cover their household garbage. They're going to be issued a fine of $50, which is a minimum charge, and up to $100, I guess, depending on the intensity of the mess that's left behind. So we're actually looking, hopefully, for prevention as opposed to issuing fines. We want to make sure that everybody follows the regulations, because I know that it's a very difficult time of year to get used to doing that again, to covering your garbage, but we really have to do it because the spring cleanup has become very difficult as a result, and it is our responsibility as a municipality and as a city.
One of the things, just to make a comment, and I don't know how we're going to address it, guys, but I think we've got to address it. I don't know if you're noticing it, but I've noticed it, and I actually spoke with one of our staff who brought it to my attention, and then I noticed it after that. We have people who are putting out garbage and they're covering it, but they're not doing it adequately. The garbage is not really, what they're doing is they're putting something on top of the garbage as opposed to having the garbage covered. And what we're trying to avoid, which are the seagulls and whatnot getting into the garbage, they have access to it quite easily. And I don't know how we go about fixing that, because you're always going to have the big debate now with somebody about, whether or not, well, I had it covered. Well, yes, you did, but you really had 3 bags of it hanging out the end because the covering you were using was not adequate to the task.
Yeah.
I don't know how we fix that.
Oh, Councillor Schwartz.
Councillor Doyles?
I want to speak to it because the past number of weeks I've been noticing it as well. And people who have the large nets with the big, opening in them, the seagulls, I was actually out talking to, the staff this past week when they were out at it, and they were saying, the seagulls are getting into the large openings in the net. I mean, maybe we're going to have to really look at the containers, because some of the areas are still a mess, and even though people got a cover, and there is a large number of people that puts out 6 and 7 bags of garbage, only 2 or 3 of them covered, and the mess is still there. So because they got them covered, how do we decide if they're getting a ticket or not? According to the law, the garbage is covered as far as they're concerned. But what we need to be telling residents that every bit of that garbage got to be covered, and if they purchase the larger nets, apparently the small mesh ones do work, but the larger ones, and if you drive around the city and you can see now, I guess people had gotten into making the larger ones thinking that they would work, but they really have to be really meshed fine. And what I was told by a couple of fishermen, that they have to be gillnet. They have to be gillnet type
Material,
nets,
yeah.
not the regular nets. And apparently people know what they should be using, but it certainly is a problem. The gulls are getting into them under the big mesh, and that's some of the problem as well.
Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Aker?
Yeah, just for clarification, there's 2 sides to this initiative, which I fully support. I mean, we go around the city these days, and the city is quite dirty, and quite often it's because people don't adequately cover up their garbage. But in addition to the fine, which is kind of the stick, so to speak, the punishment for not covering up your garbage, we'll also be cleaning it up. at the same time, right? So we incur significant costs coming back to people's houses to clean up the garbage, to try to keep the neighborhood as clean as possible. So is that on top of the $50, right? For cleanup. So, but for $50 fine is a punitive measure, plus $45, we've got to bring staff, we've got to incur extra costs to bring the trucks.
I'm not sure, Councillor, that's how it works. I'm going to turn to Mr. Lush here for.
That's my question. Thank you.
What will happen is that we issue a violation notice first. So resident has 1 week to pay the violation, to pay a voluntary payment of $50. If they don't, they have another opportunity to pay $75 within 2 weeks. If they don't pay that, then they will be issued a ticket, which is provincial courts. At that time, the ticket is, if convicted, $100, but you get your opportunity to go argue your case before the judge, not before the council or before the Public Works Committee. And there's no more cleanup fee, but it's $50 and it's voluntary. If you don't pay it, there's 14 days. It's $75. It's voluntary again. And if you wish to dispute the matter, then you have to dispute it with the provincial courts, and it's a $100 fine if convicted. That's how the process will work.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lane.
I just want to, I guess, to some degree, echo where Councillor Stoyles was starting. I think we all know there's all kinds of issues with garbage. She's absolutely right. The bigger mesh, I've watched Gulls and Crows pick through. Even some of the smaller mesh, I've seen them pick through that. I've seen them pick through any garbage that's sort of hanging out over the sides that's not properly covered. We have people that are taking garbage, putting it out the night before, which is causing problems. There's all kinds of problems associated to garbage covering or not being covered, mess, fines, notices, everything else. I think that we really need to look at moving forward with what we had talked about, I guess, perhaps even a year or so ago, and that is moving to the garbage cans. That solves everything. You can put the garbage can out the night before. There's no issue. You don't have to worry about fines or tickets or nothing like that. There's not going to be any goals. There's not going to be cleanup. There's not going to be anything. Really, the answer is those garbage cans. So I really think that we should, I'm going to ask that to go back to Public Works perhaps to look into it again. I know we had looked at it in the past and we had applied for some money from the province and so on, perhaps to be able to supply these garbage cans free of charge, which didn't come through, and I think that's where it all kind of fell flat after that. But at the end of the day, that's the only thing that's really going to work, and I think it should be revisited.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier.
Well, you're all right. We've all had that discussion at Public Works several times now about the garbage cans. We understand that it would be a very efficient and certainly a much improved system to have in place. But again, you're absolutely right. It is a budget. It's a budget item, and it's a very expensive expenditure. And of course, we did not get approval for funding when we did apply for funding from different levels of government. So it is something that's always on our radar because we really would like to avoid all of these problems. It's a nuisance for us. It's a nuisance for the staff. They spend their time during the weekdays, and the residents and the neighbors around them. A lot of really key points were raised here. The adequate coverage of garbage is really important. If you have 6 bags of garbage out, all 6 bags have to be fully covered. Whatever netting you're using, it has to be heavy enough so that seagulls and crows cannot remove it, because that also happens, because you often hear people say, I had it covered, but it blew away. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not adequate. It's not heavy enough. It has to be heavy enough so that it will not blow away, and you have to ensure that not just the top of the garbage bag is covered, but every surface of the garbage bag is covered. It should be draped. Your net or your tarp should be draped on the sidewalk practically, so that everything is adequately covered to avoid the mess that we're seeing this time of year especially.
There is no doubt, though, that the actual solution to the problem is to have containers that can be dumped appropriately with the separate bins for recycling and so on. And we're going to have to step up to the plate at some point and do that. It is a budget item. It's just a matter of how we find a mechanism to get it done.
Absolutely.
I think the will of council is to get that done.
Oh, it is. It is. There's no doubt.
And, Mount Pro is an ideal place to do it as well, We're an ideal size place to do it. But that is a challenge for Public Works and for Finance when budget time comes. I think it was $1 million for the containers, for the containers, Yes, for the containers, it would be $1 million.
Yep. And
It's
then
$100 a household, isn't it?
Then we were looking at some kind of hydraulic arm system.
Yeah.
Yep.
There
We're
it
looking
is.
at some kind of hydraulic arm system for
Well, then
the
you're,
dumping
yeah,
of.
yeah.
That's even more.
That's
And that's
even
even
more.
more.
But it is being done in other parts of the province.
even
Labrador
more, yeah.
City, when I was up in Labrador City
Labrador City
last
has
year,
that system in place.
Labrador City has it in place. I was up there. I went around. Actually, the Public Works foreman up in Labrador City took us around, and it works unbelievably well. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah,
That's something
it's very
that we
efficient.
really need to look at. Like, it's unbelievable seeing the truck go from street to street and picking up the containers, even in the winter time, in the harsh conditions that we have. Apparently, it do work.
Oh, yes.
So it's certainly something that we really need to look at.
Thank you. We ready to move on?
I believe
Because
we
that's not a motionable item. That's just a warning.
Tenders were called for the supply and the delivery of winter road salt for the 2011-2012 winter season. I got to tell you, I'm pretty sick of bringing in winter stuff when we just got rid of it.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but it's got to be done.
It really is.
It's pretty cold out there today.
It really is. That's right. We're not too far away from it today. We're recommending that the tender be awarded to the sole bidder, Avalon Coal and Salt, for the tender price of $101.33 per metric ton, and I so move.
It is moved, seconded by Councillor Walsh. All those in favor? Contrary-minded, motion carried.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Community Services Committee, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a couple of very quick items. The night following our last public council meeting, Your Worship, we had the Focus on Youth Awards gala presentation, dinner, show by the Mount Pearl Show Choir. Just a splendid night. I wanted to acknowledge, first of all, the two major winners, the Female Youth of the Year, Alicia Ellsworth, and the Male Youth of the Year, Sean Leonard. I think Alicia is a student. Alyssa? Alyssa is a student, I think, at O'Donnell High School, and Sean Leonard is a student from Mount Pearl Senior High School, and both tremendous representatives of youth and what youth do and are involved with in our city. I won't go through the recognition. They're all listed, of course, and it's kind of old news now, but one of the things that was part of the program of events for that evening, Your Worship, you had the honor, I'm sure, of presenting to Carl and Jackie Golding a presentation signifying their involvement over 25 years. This was the 25th year of the actual Ceteris show, and as part of the Focus on Youth Awards, that was a pretty appropriate time for the city to take note of the fact that these people have been contributing in such a huge way for 25 consecutive years, and it's a lot of work. They put a lot of time, energy, and no doubt in the early years, and probably still to this day, even a lot of their own money into kind of getting this show off the ground every year. So for both the Focus on Youth Awards and particularly to the Goldings, whose particular show was the focus, the Etc. 25 was really the focus of the entertainment that night. Our heartfelt appreciation and also thanks and congratulations on 25 years of success with Etc.
Absolutely.
The only other item for me, Your Worship, is actually approval for Mr. Tremarney to attend the Recreation Newfoundland and Labrador meetings, which are taking place the first week of June. They'll be taking place in Gander, and of course this is part of our Director's Professional Development budget, and I so move.
Seconded.
It is moved and seconded by Councillor Lane. Question or comment? All those in favor? Contrary-minded, motion is carried. Brian, do you know how to find your way to Gander yet? I do, sir. You got that down now? Yes. Right, you're learning the rock inside out, are you? That's good. We're moving on. Next, the next committee is the Corporate Services Committee. Councillor Lane.
Yes, Your Worship. First item, Your Worship, we are recommending approval. I'm going to make this a little bigger so I can see.
Isn't it wonderful you can make it bigger so you can see?
It is, because I wouldn't be able to see otherwise. I really need reading glasses. I just refuse to put them on. I actually have a pair. But
Is it actually vanity?
I think, I don't know what it
vanity?
is. I just don't want to admit I'm getting old.
Man is bald.
Sanity or stupidity is
Well, probably stupidity, but
I was going to say
just
that
don't want to admit I'm getting old, Your Worship.
men as bald as you and I should not be vain.
No, true enough. Anyway, we're recommending approval for the CAO to attend the Federation of Canadian Municipalities annual AGM, June 3rd to the 6th in Halifax, and that will be under her professional development cap. I so move.
Moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Tessier. Question or comment? Isn't the CAO also going to the to the CAMA conference, which is held just ahead of it. She's actually there and will stay there, is the process.
Okay.
All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
Invoices for approval totaling $91,546.64, listed 1 through 7. I so move.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Tessier.
Question, Your Worship.
Deputy Mayor Locke, please.
I just got a question there about item number 3 about the installation of nets at St. David's. Has that gone up considerably over last year? It just seems like it's a little more expensive than what we paid last year. Anyone know to that? Almost seems like it's double over what we paid last year. Just curious.
Mr. Lush. I don't remember what we paid
No,
last year.
some
I
of it was
just looked at-
repairs from the hurricane, that's why it is substantial. There's hurricane damage there, so there was some.
Okay.
Oh, Hurricane Igor is included. Call the question then. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried.
Abstain from number 4 because we can't affect.
Number 4 is,
The gateway signage, EC Boom.
we will just pass the,
This is already, these are just invoices.
yeah, you're just approving the invoice. You're not approving the business. You are not in a conflict, Councillor Stoyles, but it will be recognized if you want. Thank you very much.
Where are we to with that, by the way, Your Worship? I never noticed with that signage.
A lot of work has been done on it now.
Nothing up yet, those are.
Mr.
Concrete
Yefchak,
bases
can
up,
you,
but the signs aren't up.
can you update council?
Yes, Your Worship, the concrete base, as you say, is up, and they also have the metal supports for the sign, and there was, I believe, some difficulty in the actual sign face, and it's being worked on right now, so hopefully within the next short time you'll see the signs up.
Very good.
Okay.
We'll call the question then. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
Next,
3.
Your Worship, we're recommending approval to defer taxes in the amount of $1,187.13 for the roll number listed in accordance with our policy for low-income earners, and I so move.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
Next item, Your Worship, as Council is aware, we took it on ourselves this year. We had budgeted in for this year's budget to revise our emergency preparedness plan. And this is not the emergency preparedness plan for the facility, but actually for the entire city. That would cover off, I guess, what we would do in the event of any type of emergency that would occur in the city of Mount Pearl, and outlining what our resources are, where people would gather, and so on. Everything that would be contained in an emergency plan. We had an emergency preparedness plan done a number of years ago, but it really hadn't been updated, and so we decided it was time to dust it off and have a new plan that recognized our actual circumstance right now. So that plan now has been drafted. Council was provided with a copy, and before we can actually approve it, it has to actually go to Municipal Affairs and be approved by them. So I am moving that we would now forward that draft plan to the provincial government for approval.
I haven't seen it.
I was going to say, I haven't
Did I
seen.
miss it, or I haven't seen a copy of that plan yet?
My understanding, now, it was my understanding, Councillor Walsh and
Yep.
Ms. Peach is not here now. My understanding was forwarded to all members of council.
I,
But we can defer if that wasn't done.
No, I have no, I don't think it's a need to
Well-
defer, but I'd love to have an opportunity not
Yeah,
only to see
I
it, but
thought-
maybe discuss some things that might be
Yeah.
contained in the draft prior to it going
is a
to
draft, yeah.
to emergency services.
It's in your Dropbox, apparently.
It's in the Dropbox and has been provided. It
Oh, will be in the
it will be.
Dropbox.
Can I request
So-
then that we will defer item 4?
If that's the case, then I'm going to, yeah, I would agree, because if we're going to send a draft into the province to approve, and that, I think we should all see it and have some input before we send it in to be approved by the province.
That'd be a good idea.
I had the impression that everyone had already seen it. It was in the Dropbox. I thought it
No.
was.
No.
So we'll defer it then, if that's the case.
Okay.
We'll bring it
defer
forward
item,
at the next public meeting.
defer item 4. Yep.
Okay. Next item, Your Worship, we're recommending approval to provide a $2,000 contribution to our social club. There were funds budgeted in the 2011 budget. This is something we do every year, and of course, it's used by our staff for various team building activities and so on. So we move that, Your Worship, 2,000.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
And the final item, Your Worship, very pleased to recommend approval of the appointment of Mr. Jason Silver to the position of Director of Corporate Services, effective June the 6th, 2011. Of Of course, as we're all aware, Ms. Peach was our Director of Corporate Services, and she was a successful applicant for our CAO position when Mr. Lewis retired. So now we have to fill Ms. Peach's old position, and so Mr. Silver, I guess, was a successful candidate. He actually is coming to us from the City of St. John's, I understand, and he'll be starting on June the 6th.
Former Mount Pearl as well.
Pardon me?
He grew up in Mount Pearl. He went to school with my son. And
He's an auditor.
Well, that
He's
makes him even better.
I believe we don't
So
have
he
his.
defected to the dark side. Now he's coming back home.
Yeah, we don't have
The
his
force is
CV.
with him.
We don't have his CV, I don't think, in the Dropbox, but he has extensive experience and is currently serving as an internal auditor with the City of St. John's and applied for this position. Certainly proved to be a very strong candidate, and we look forward to his arrival. He will be taking on the former position that was held by Ms. Peach as Director of Corporate Services. The man on the money, Mr. Jason Silver. We're looking forward to his arrival.
That's it,
We
Your
will
Worship.
call the question on accepting that recommendation. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Contrary-minded, motion is carried. Thank you very much. The next committee report is Planning and the Land Use Development Committee. Deputy Mayor Locke.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've got quite a few items here to get through today, so bear with us. The first item here, Your Worship, has to do with an application. Oh, go back. Sorry, hit a wrong button. From Jordan Construction on 37 Commonwealth Avenue. And as of January 25th, 2011, Council considered and refused this development application. Essentially what happened, they applied to extend their garage there, and we turned them down. Excuse me, Worship, I got something caught in my throat again.
Only happens on Tuesdays at this time.
All right, here we go. Try it again. All right, so January 25th, 2011, Council considered and refused a development application from Jordan Construction to extend an accessory building in the rear of their property. And basically, we turned it down because it didn't meet the regulations for this particular general commercial zone. They appealed it on February the 8th, but it turns out that the appeal process is going to take so long that the appeal board hasn't been set yet, and it won't be until sometime in the fall before they can actually hear this particular case.
Really?
So the proponents came to us and asked if we could reconsider. So the committee did meet with them, and basically that was in April, and they essentially went over what they wanted to do at the rear of their property. So Councillor Aker and I, subsequent to that meeting, we visited the site with the proponent, and essentially they want to add a piece to the existing garage there, essentially to provide storage for a lot of the building materials and facilities that are in the backyard. It was initially turned down because we deemed it a warehouse use, which is, again, doesn't meet the zoning regulations here. But upon meeting the proponent and having a look at the site to see what they wanted to do, they guaranteed that there will be no additional traffic to the area, no additional workers coming to the area, but essentially they want to put an extension onto the existing building there just to put the items that are currently being stored outside inside. So we did have a look at the existing garage, Councillor Aker and I, and again, we could see what they were actually proposing to do. So we came back to committee and presented that, and then we asked the planning department if they could have a look at it to see if we could reconsider the application, to see if somehow we could accommodate what they were trying to do. Excuse me. In reviewing the application, when we looked further at our municipal plan policies, policy 3.3.1, in implementing the development regulation condition 16, it said there that under the non-conforming use, when a non-conforming commercial use exists within this zone, council may allow the non-conforming commercial use to expand, provided the expanded development improves the appearance of the property, does not impact negatively upon surrounding residential properties, meets the objectives and the policies that are transforming the area into a commercial main streets, complies with the development standards of the use zone, and is processed pursuant to the regulations 22 and 86 of the regulations. So once the committee looked at this, Your Worship, we felt that the proposal would improve the appearance of the site because a lot of the stuff that's currently being stored outside would be within the building, so that wasn't an issue. In terms of the negative impact, we did have one concern from a resident on Bannister Street about potential noise issues. But the proponent indicated that they would even be willing to construct not just a chain link fence, but a higher privacy fence if that would satisfy that concern there. And also, we didn't feel that it would negatively impact upon the residential properties, or the extension is relatively minor in scale and its location to the rear of the existing dwelling, so that it will not affect the character or the nature of Commonwealth Avenue as a commercial main street. So the extension would meet the development standards as they pertain to the non-conforming uses. So as such, the committee is recommending that rather than await the appeal process that again could take into the fall, that this application be reactivated and be processed in accordance with regulations 22 and 86, which will require a public notice and a consultation process and provisions, and I so move.
It is moved and seconded by Councillor Aker. So what happens if we approve this today? What we're approving here is simply the reactivation of the application. And then we're going to go through a public process under
Yes.
our variance regulations.
Yes.
Okay, so this is just step one in getting this done. But will this then does away with the need for appeal, at least at this point? If it gets turned down again, I guess then
Then
it
they
would
could
just
appeal
react,
again.
it would just start up again.
Yes, but it also
For the
got,
fall.
instead of having to go through a plan amendment and, amending our regulations, this we saw as a possible way to accommodate the request. Did you want to add something there, Mr.
Okay.
Yachek?
Yes, Your Worship, you're correct in the process. What we're doing essentially here, we've made a decision to refuse the application. The applicant has appealed. The committee has looked at the matter again, and what they're saying is, let's take a look at the application, go through the appropriate process, and if council does make that decision through the public consultation process to approve it, then the appeal will be dropped. If not, they still have their appeal.
Okay, thank you. I was not aware, Mr. Yafchek, you might be able to answer. Were you made aware? I was not aware that the Regional Appeal Board was not sitting. Obviously, the appointments to that board had expired, I'm assuming, and no new appointments had been made, and so that makes it very difficult when we do encounter
Indeed.
this kind of circumstance.
Yes, Your Worship. They haven't been sitting since much earlier in the spring. The last appeal board, I think, ended sometime in January or February, and there's been nothing, at least in the Eastern Newfoundland regional region, I should say, for appeals since then. So those municipalities that do have appeals, that do go to the appeal board, they're all in abeyance right now, waiting for the appointment of the board and then the setting of the first hearings. And that's the issue that these gentlemen raised.
Are running into. I have to say, not being aware of that circumstance is disappointing, and to be kind, is disappointing. Somebody is not doing their job because we should have been made aware of it. The Department of Municipal Affairs should recognize as well that justice sometimes, all the time, requires that it be relatively swift. And when you've got somebody that has an application before us and we've refused it, they wish to challenge that decision. To have them wait months and months and months and months goes to the heart of that philosophy that I believe exists, that if you delay, it will go away. And that is a very unfortunate circumstance that we were never officially notified that the board's term had expired, that no new people had been appointed or any plan put in place to appoint those people. And that's, quite frankly, that's not good enough. And I think we should impart that at our earliest opportunity to the Minister of Municipal and Provincial Affairs. I don't know whether Council will agree with me, but with your leave, I want to jot a little letter to Minister O'Brien to express our disappointment with that set of circumstances, and it continues to this day. Somebody appealing an application that we may disapprove of this day, the first going into the 1st of June, would not get an appeal till the construction season was over.
Right.
That's not appropriate. That's not good enough in my view. But, Mr. Yevchek.
Just for information purposes, Your Worship, we do have also another appeal, and that's against an order that we've issued regarding the removal of a hedge. If Council recall, that was back again, if you recall, sometime around January, and that is still outstanding. And at this point, we really can't take any action until that appeal is heard. So,
And that's from last January.
From January.
So if I have council's permission to do that, I don't know that a motion is required. I just want everybody to nod agreement with me.
Yeah.
Give me consensus. I'm going to dash a letter off to the minister to express our concern and to say, I don't care that there's an election in October. We need an active board, and I really don't want Mount Pearl at some point to have to step up to the plate and appoint a local board. That's really difficult for council. Council has never wanted to do that. We've always wanted to use the regional board because of its not only in reality but its perceived independence. Yeah, and, you know,
Right.
its impartiality is critical to the process. But you got to have one in place.
It's got to be timely.
I'm very disappointed to hear that that's the circumstance, and I appreciate council making the effort on behalf of this particular citizen to try and get something done right.
Well,
for us.
potentially,
Thank you.
it was a 9-month wait. I mean, they appealed it in February.
Yeah.
So if they didn't get a response until, you know, late September, October, you're talking 8 or 9 months
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
a decision can be rendered.
Your Worship,
Councillor
Yeah,
Lane, sorry.
if you're going to be whipping off a letter, I was going to bring up under new business, but if you're going to be whipping off a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs about that particular board, can we add to it the Eastern Waste Management Board? My name was put forward to represent the City of Mount Pearl months ago. There are other municipalities. I know I've spoken to Walter Bott, who's a rep down in Torbay, Portugal Cove area and so on, and he has the same concern that we've heard nothing. Business continues to go on at Robin Hood Bay. Decisions are being made and so on. There is no board in place. I don't know who is running the place down there. And so maybe you could add that to the letter as well. When are we going to find out about that board? Because
I would rather do it under, I appreciate what you're saying and I support what
it's
you're
the
saying.
same person. is
I
all
do it
I'm
under a
saying.
separate heading.
That's fine. We'll do two letters. Why
We'll
rather?
do two, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, no
but anyway.
worries. No, that was our recommendation, so
Okay.
I move the recommendation.
All right, the recommendation is moved and seconded. Did we call the motion? Mona, did we do it?
We didn't, no.
We didn't. I'll call the question then if there are no other comments. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried.
The next item, Your Worship, has to do with a proposed amendments to the St. John's Urban Regional Plan from the town of Torbay. We received a letter dated May 4th, 2011 from the town of Torbay regarding proposed amendments to the town of Torbay Municipal Plan and the town of Torbay Development Regulations which will require an amendment to the St. John's Urban Regional Plan. The department reviewed the proposed amendments and advised that the department has no objections to these amendments from Mount Pearl's perspective. So as such, our committee is recommending that the City of Mount Pearl respond in writing that it has no objections to the proposed Town of Torbay Municipal Plan Amendment number 18, 2011, and the Town of Torbay Development Regulations Amendment number 37, 2011, and I so move.
It is moved by Deputy Mayor Locke, seconded by Councillor Aker. Question or comment? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just getting to the next.
Yeah, a lot of paperwork attached to that one we didn't have to
Here.
print, eh?
Yeah. You got the next one? Yep. Okay, Your Worship. The next one.
Don't you just love the Town of Torbay logo, though?
I do like it.
Well, I
Yeah.
got to say, it's really nice, isn't it?
It's almost as nice as ours, actually.
Almost as nice as ours.
Almost. The next item here, Your Worship, has to do with an application for an accessory building at 15 Normas Avenue. We received an application May the 13th by the property owner at this address to construct an accessory building, basically a shed at the rear of the property, measuring 10 feet by 12 feet. This particular property is in the residential medium density land use zone. And under our regulations, Condition 7 states that the maximum floor area of an accessory building shall be 50 square meters or 7% of the total lot coverage, whichever is less. Thus, in keeping with Condition 7, we determined that the lot area was 1,224 square meters, 7% will be 85.6 meters. Therefore, based on the formula, the maximum size for all accessory buildings on this particular lot would be 50 square meters, the lesser of the two. This property has an existing garage on it that measures 30 by 32, which is approximately 960 square feet, just over 89 square meters. The new proposed shed would be 11.12 square meters, or about 120 square feet. So that would bring the proposed, if this shed were to go ahead, the proposed shed area for this particular lot would actually be over 100 square meters, which is almost double what our regulations call for. So as such, the committee is recommending refusal of the application for a secondary accessory building at 15 Normas Avenue as the current building currently exceeds the maximum floor area of an accessory building of 50 square meters or 7% of the lot coverage, whichever is less. And I so move.
It is moved and seconded. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. As you know, Your Worship, I spoke to this issue in committee, and I will support the refusal of this permit because it is in violation of our regulations. I do want to note a couple of things, though. First of all, the existing garage is already exceeds, I think, the size of what would be approved for an accessory building, but because it's an old development and it's being grandfathered, and it leads me to the second point, which I think is important. We have a 50 square meter restriction, total restriction for accessory buildings in the city of Mount Pearl. And I don't want to approve anything in this chamber that violates our own regulations. Why would we do that? So it's for that reason that I support this particular motion of committee. But I did ask committee, and I think it would probably be prudent to have a look at the regulations for the 50 square meters as it pertains to all lots of the city. Some lots, 50 by 100 foot lots, that may make perfectly good sense. This particular lot on Norma's Avenue is I think a little over 100 square feet on the front. And while this exceeds our regulations by an appreciable amount, as Deputy Mayor Locke has already said, I'm not sure that the 50 square meter standard should apply necessarily to all lots. If you have a huge lot and you can accommodate something larger than 50 square meters in terms of the total size of accessory buildings, I believe it's something that we could probably look at. So while I will support the recommendation for refusal on this particular application, I would ask again that we have a look at the regulation to see if it doesn't make sense in terms of having more of an allowance for other buildings, other accessory buildings on lots, particularly in the older part of Mount Pearl, like this location in Norma's Avenue. The truth of the matter is, if you actually looked at this, despite our regulations and despite this being over our regulations by a considerable amount, I don't think there'd be one person object to this if it actually were built on Norma's Avenue. I know the lot. It's right next to Hawk Duplicating, right next door to it. The Whites have been living there for a long, long time. The accessory building, as I said, the garage has been there
forever,
right, for a long time, when the house was first built. So, it's for all these reasons that, that Mr. White, when he contacted me, said, really, this doesn't make any sense to refuse it. And he said, I just want to put a lawnmower and a few tools in there. And he has vehicles, old collectible vehicles that he keeps. They're in beautiful shape, and he likes to keep them in the garage. That's the purpose of it. So again, while I support the recommendation of council, I would like that we'd have a look at it, through planning to see if that one size fits all at 50 square meters in total is actually appropriate for larger lots when things like the large garage in this case is being grandfathered in, or if you're looking at it under a different set of guidelines or regulations, it wouldn't necessarily make sense. That, I can tell you, that shed in the corner of his yard is not going to
bother anybody.
Not going to be an intrusion.
The question that I would pose, and I'll pose it to the deputy mayor or to the planner, if we said that the maximum floor area of accessory buildings, as opposed to just one building, was 7% of coverage, could be, and not had that maximum of 50 square meters. It was based on the size of the lot. I kind of appreciate where Councillor Walsh is coming from. Based on the size of the lot, you've got to accommodate much larger homes and much larger accessory buildings. I think of what work has been done, beautiful work, by the way, that's been done on houses on Sunrise Avenue, where lots are uniquely large. And when people build to the maximum they're allowed to build on Sunrise, and we have several people that have done so, they've got homes that rival anything in the region, huge houses. We ought to be able to accommodate that reality without having this saw-off of 50 square meters, I think. Now, maybe that's something you're going to have to take a look at. The question that I would pose, because I don't have the figures in front of me, if that 50 square meters didn't exist and we were just talking 70% of lot coverage, just 7% of lot coverage, would the amount or number of accessory, or amount of accessory building Mr. White has, would that still exceed what would be allowed on that lot?
It would, unfortunately, but you make a very valid point. The fact of the matter is, this proposed development for the accessory building exceeds it, as Deputy Mayor Locke said, by about 50%, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas, if you look at the 7% only, it's not a lot outside the 10% variance. He doesn't qualify for a variance. That's why he can't take that route. And he was given that advice, and that was the proper advice, obviously, from our people in planning to do that. But I did the figures, and I had it, instead of 10%, it was 7 point something. I think what he was proposing came to 8.26 or something.
Versus 7%.
Versus 7%. So
Okay.
it's not humongous as it sounds here, and that's why I say if you look at it in the actual garden, if you look at the property, it really wouldn't be an intrusion in that garden at all.
The issue is the square foot max.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I thank
And we did touch on that at committee, but if the total lot area, according to the kit here, this particular case is 1,224.22 square meters. So 7% lot area would bring it into 85.6 meters. So even with the 7%, they are still at 100.33 meters. So the 7%, they're still quite a large amount over the.
So should the challenge be then? In studying this?
Right.
Yeah. Why 7%? Why not 10? Why not 9? Mr. Yevchek, what's the thinking behind
That's
that?
what we can have a review of that.
What's
if you
the
like,
thinking behind
or
that number of
discuss it here.
7%?
Your Worship, I think if you take a look at most development regulations, not only in this province but probably across the country, 7% has been kind of the rule of thumb that's been used for accessory buildings. Sorry?
For urban standards?
In urban standards, correct.
Yeah.
When this issue came up a number of years ago, because we did take a look at this issue, at the time council was concerned about the inconsistency about the size of accessory buildings on different lots of different sizes. And while they had no problem with the 7%, it was felt because of the dense urban nature of Mount Pearl that we should have a maximum floor area for an accessory building. And council decided that 50 square meters is approximately 7% of a 50 by 100 foot lot, and that should be the requirement for buildings. So that's why you have a regulation that reads 50 square meters or 7%, whichever is lesser.
What is the process for council through planning committee to go back and review that and maybe have a look at taking that maximum of 50 square meters out? Is that a difficult task, I'm thinking, from a regulatory perspective to get done?
No, Your Worship, it would be just once council has determined what they wish to do. And what we would do is we would probably do, if that's certainly the direction that council wishes to move in, we would do research, bring the research back to the Planning and Land Use Development Committee on standards for lot coverage of accessory buildings. And if supports by the committee to council and council supports a change, then it would be a simple, well, not simple, but it would be an amendment to our development regulation and not our plan, not to the planner.
No.
So it would be basically the development regulation, an amendment to the text, and that would be it.
Well, while none of this discussion helps Mr. White at all, I think it will help others in the future, and I'd recommend we go back and take a look at it. It could down the road.
My question
could
is,
down the road.
my question is,
Councilor
if the planning committee does review this and determine that maybe in unique circumstances like lots, like Mr. White's, if perhaps there might be some room, some wiggle room there for accessory building development. If that's the case, would Mr. White then have the option to reapply? I'm assuming he would.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes,
That would not be an issue, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Of course so, yeah.
That was my point. You were
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Walsh, let you
I
finish up.
realize that this, if you just do the math, 89.2 and 11.1, that's a little over 100, but he has 100 square meters, but he has 1,224 square meters, so he'd require something less, or in the area of less than 8.5% of the total lot coverage to be required, even though, as you say, Deputy Mayor, he's 50% over what we're allowing, but what we're allowing just maybe doesn't make sense. 100%. And, in a perfect world, these urban standards, and I think Mr. Yevchek, as well as anybody else, has his head around, what is standard across the country for urban design and urban regulations. And this is probably in compliance with that. But Mount Pearl was not always built to that same urban standard at the very beginning. And this is a perfect example. Normers Avenue, all of the development of the last 25, 30 years have been done to an excellent urban standard. This lot and lots in that area are considerably larger. And, as I said, sometimes when we do amend regulations, we do it because the regulations simply don't make sense in a particular instance. This might be one of those instances where it really doesn't matter. It sounds like this would be a huge intrusion, that it's 50% over the 50-meter limit.
It's 100%.
But it wouldn't at all. Wouldn't at all. Yeah, 100% actually. But it wouldn't at all when you look at it in terms of the 7%.
Having said that, we're going to let the Deputy Mayor close debate on this matter.
Sure. I'm just wondering, maybe we can look at it, and to Councillor Walsh's point, maybe in such cases, a discretionary measure might be in place. To Councillor Tessier's point, whereby, council has discretion in these unique circumstances, because they're going to, there's limited areas where we could apply discretion. So that may be a way, but we'll certainly explore that at committee level.
Having said all of that,
Okay?
while that's great work for the future, it does nothing for the applicant in front of us. The motion is that we not approve or that we refuse the application for the second accessory building at 50 Normers Avenue. It has been moved and seconded. I'll now call the question. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? That motion is carried.
All right, thank you, Your Worship.
Deputy Mayor, carry on.
And the next item has to do with an order that was issued for 13 Corey King Drive concerning the matter of development by CMT Incorporated at this address, which is proceeding without a building permit. An order has been issued to the registered directors of CMT Incorporated with a copy to the property owner on May the 25th of 2011 by the Office of the Director of Planning and Development. The issuance of this order was undertaken in accordance with the delegation of authority as per Section 109 of the Urban and Rural Planning Act 2000 and the Council Minute 0906463. And our committee is recommending confirmation of the issuance of this order as presented here, and I so move.
Moved and seconded. Question, comment?
Yeah, question.
Councillor Lane.
I can seem to recall bringing this up one time before, but I'm not sure where it went at the time. Well, it obviously didn't go anywhere. But is there any punitive action that can be, how often do you see the situation where people are doing stuff without permits? They decide they're not going to get building permits, they're going to defy orders of council and everything else, and at the end of the day, we'll slap a stop work order or something at some point in time, but at the end of the day, there seems like there's no punitive measures that we can ever take to discourage that type of activity. I mean, that's not acceptable for someone to be going ahead doing stuff, especially in a commercial zone with no permits in place, no nothing. And at the end of the day, our worst punishment is, well, you're going to have to stop doing that now. But there's no deterrent to prevent people from doing that type of thing. So it seems like I brought it up one time before, and I don't know if the answer was, well, there's nothing we can do legally, or what it was, or we just didn't bother to do anything with it. I don't know, but I'll ask Mr. Yepchek.
Your Worship, there is punitive action we can take. There is action, and we could actually take them to court and fine them on a daily basis for every time they're not in compliance. We could also get a court injunction through the courts to prevent them from going any further. But the stop order is really the second step in the process towards that situation. What happens first is that our inspectors go out, and if there's a problem, they give them a violation notice. It's just a notice saying, this is a problem, get your information, in this case, get your information in, or there'll be further action taken by the city. In this case, the individual didn't get the information in. We have issued the order, and if they did not stop, we would then go to the next stage and look for either a court injunction or take them to court. Now, taking them to court in terms of a daily fine, you almost have to issue the order every day the way the legislation reads. And it's a very costly venture for us in terms of taking a lawyer. I'm happy to report, and this is why I was trying to get the attention of His Worship, is that the individual, they did stop, and we did meet with them the very next day, and they did submit the information that's requested, and we're now in the process of issuing a building permit probably sometime tomorrow. So I agree with you. It seems like many times we're in a situation where the response isn't that quick. In this case, the response has been very quick, and we do have the information we're looking for.
Thank you very much. Nonetheless, we still have to
Confirm the order.
affirm the order. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
So the process does work, is what you're saying, most times. It's just, yes, but sometimes, to Councillor Lane's point, it tends to be a drawn-out process that, they seem to thumb their nose at us sometimes, yeah. The next item here, Your Worship, has to do with Bell Aliant and their plans to install fibre optics in the city of Mount Pearl. We met with Bell Aliant, our committee, and I think Economic Development Committee also met a couple of months back now. And subsequent to this meeting, there was another meeting with staff whereby Bell Aliant is ready to implement their plans for the service within the region and within Mount Pearl. And they are now ready to proceed with detailed engineering, design, and implementation work. On May 24th, staff met with Bell Aliant to discuss these plans, the timing, and the approval processes, and the following matters were discussed. Outlined here the bullets, just to go through them. Every power pole within the city will receive a new fibre optic cable. There will be approximately 35 pole-mounted cabinets installed within the city to serve as a cross-connection point for the fibre optics. Bell Aliant has divided the city into 3 colored-coded installation areas, and they're outlined in your kit there. Green, pink, and yellow. The green is going to have 14 cabinets. Pink will have 17 cabinets, and the yellow zone will have 4 cabinets for a total of 35. Bell Aliant will commence with the project with the green area and will make submission of proposed locations on a go-forward basis in increments, approximately 5 cabinets at a time, for city approval. And they've currently proceeded with the GPS mapping of homes and poles, and they would like to proceed with this, as early as next week. And they anticipate that the overall installation process for this fibre optic service would be completed by the end of October 2011. A copy of the proposed activity plan, sample images of proposed pole-mounted cabinets, and a map illustrating the installation areas, again, are attached. The following information was also discussed during our committee meeting in terms of the location and the design of the cabinets. Cabinets generally will be mounted sideways or on the back of poles away from traffic. They have no electrical power to them. They're going to avoid walkways and driveway areas. They will be in close proximity to parking lots and to roads for easy access. They're going to be located so as to maintain distance from intersections as well as maintain sight triangles at intersections. Any maintenance stops at these cabinets are intended to be short, within minutes, we were told, so they're not going to be parking there for long durations to do work there. It's apparently a pretty quick process to open the cabinet and do the necessary hookup. City snow clearing and snow storage operations will need to be considered in terms of the location of these cabinets. They do have an anti-graffiti coating on them, but it was raised at our initial meeting. The color of the cabinets is sort of this beige-white color that's presented here. They're pre-ordered, prefabricated, so there's nothing we could do with the particular cabinets. Representatives of the Planning and Development Department and Engineering Services met with Bell Aliant, and they have no objections to their proposal here. The department is recommending that the cabinets and associated cables on existing poles to accommodate, again, the new fibre optics be approved. The committee agrees with this, so I move that the recommendation be accepted as presented.
It is moved and seconded.
Question.
Councillor Tessier.
These cabinets are going to need to be visited for maintenance, as Deputy Mayor Locke alluded to. I know that we've had some issues in the past with maintenance vehicles tearing up lawns, tearing up some of our green space. So my question is there something in there that would prohibit commercial vehicles, these vehicles, from pulling up onto our green space to do exactly that when they're having the maintenance done?
Again, that was discussed, and their locations are going to be close to parking lots, so we won't have to drive up, they're hoping, and roads. But I don't remember specifically if they're not intending to pull up in our green space and drive on grassy areas. That didn't come up in the meeting, at least I don't remember. Councillor Aker, do you remember any point to that?
This issue didn't come up, but it's a very good issue because we've had, like you say, incidences with some of these cabinets.
Yes.
What was the assurances I got was that every one of these locations will be vetted by staff.
Yes.
All right, the staff will have the final say, and I guess basically
Our
perhaps
staff?
our
Yes.
staff, yes, will have
In
the final
increments of 5,
approval.
yes.
So I guess basically this is a good consideration for direction, I should say, for us to give the staff in the approval. I would expect if it's close to a green area that we'd be asking Bella Line to put some pavement in so that the grass doesn't get beat up.
Should go for that filter.
Councillor Stiles?
Thank you, Worship. I certainly support the initiative and what Bell Line is in the process doing. One of the things, though, for the record, I wanted to go on to inform the residents that everybody is not going to be able to receive the fibre optics, and that anybody who, like me, live in what we call Newtown and subdivisions that everything is underground, they have decided that it's too costly to venture to dig up and offer these services to people in areas like that. So it's disappointing, and I mean, I sat at the meeting representing economic development, and I asked the questions at the meeting, and I was a little bit disappointed that they're not moving ahead. I mean, the reason the underground wiring and everything was put in back then was, I guess, new technology and going to be easier to maintain, and there wouldn't be as many outings, power outings and things like that, because everything was underground if there was a sleet storm. And it was, I guess, more pilot projects when it was done, and it certainly has worked over the years, but it's a bit disappointing to see that because of the cost, these areas are not going to now get the same, I guess, new technology that other areas in the province will get, because if something needs to be done, something has to be dug up, they certainly will. We can let them know and they will consider it, but I just wanted to mention that and have it duly noted.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tessier, did you have another comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, no, when we were talking then about the vehicles driving up onto the green space, I guess just for the consideration of staff, when the pole placement is determined, I'd like it if we could, if it's at all possible, to see if we can't ensure that it is near parking lots, because I can see a situation where a van might have to come up to conduct regular maintenance, and they can't stop on a street, so they may feel that their only option is to pull up onto the sidewalk, and then not only just the sidewalk, but again the green space. So there's a concern with the sidewalk being blocked as well for pedestrian traffic, and of course the green space being damaged as well. So I guess just for the staff's benefit, if we could ensure that placement is somewhere where the maintenance people can actually get out and walk to the pole and park safely and properly without destroying any of our green space as well, or causing any risk to our pedestrian traffic.
Okay, thank you.
No, valid points. And to Councillor Stoyle's point, Your Worship, that was raised at the committee about because there are quite a few areas with underground servicing in the city here. Yeah, I as well live in an area that where it's underground, but again, it came down basically to cost, right? And they're proceeding with this. And to Councillor Stoyle's point, they indicated that if we got to do any sort of underground work in an area or new road work, that they may be able to connect up to the fibre optics. But that's a business decision that they made. Pardon me?
Connect?
Yeah. To the fibre optics. It's a coaxial cable now that's just coming from the boxes to the house, but they want to
Get the upgrades.
they want to put the fibre optics to the houses, right?
Our problem, for example, is I can't get HD TV. They can only deliver so much.
Right.
And so if you've got high speed, if you've got your high speed connection, your high speed computer, and you've got your televisions and your telephone now, because all of that's done through the one circuit, you get 14 gigabytes or whatever
Right.
is the maximum. So I can't get HD television and keep because of the underground wiring.
Your Worship, if you were a hockey fan, that'd be a reason to move.
He's a golf athlete, apparently.
A bit of a hockey fan too.
No comment.
So now I'm a fat.
Moron at least. Or a moron at least, right?
All right. Hey, Mr. Worship,
On some order,
yeah,
calling the question.
call the question. Yep.
All those in favor of allowing to do this? Opposed? Motion is carried.
The next item, Your Worship, has to do with a variance request regarding a subsidiary apartment at 14 Padden Place.
Brother, they did a lot of writing.
They did a lot of writing. They're proposing a subsidiary apartment again at the existing dwelling at 14 Padden Place. This particular property is located within residential high-density land use zone, and in accordance with Condition 8 of the table, the minimum frontage requirement for this would be 13.5 meters. The property is deficient in the minimum frontage requirement by 0.7 meters. So to be able to accommodate the proposed apartment, the applicant is requesting a 10% variance to the minimum 13.5 meter frontage requirement for this particular land use zone. In terms of the relationship to the land use in the area, this is sort of a unique case because I think that the zoning sort of changed throughout the history here. There are currently 9 properties on the street that have existing subsidiary apartments which do not meet the minimum frontage requirements. And there are remaining 3 subsidiary apartments that exceed the frontage requirements. And again, this is due to the development history of this particular location. It seems to have changed throughout. The variance request was considered. We did have some written concerns here. The area owners were advised that the variance request was being processed, and letters were mailed out to the property owners, 130 property owners actually, in 150 meters of this particular property. And we did get 5 letters returned, or 5 comments, if you will, 5 submissions. 2, there were no objection, and 1 was an inquiry with no comment. But we did have 2 written representations that were concerned about this particular variance here. One pertained to, just find it here in the kit. One pertained to, it was a house across the street from 14 Padden Place, and they were concerned about parking. But when we considered the parking requirements there, we do provide on-street parking in the carriageway on 14 Padden Place. So that wasn't seen as a concern by the committee.
Is there a parking space on the property for the subsidiary apartment?
They have adequate frontage to accommodate the parking for the subsidiary apartment and still maintaining the 50% landscaping requirement.
Are we making off-street parking then for that particular site a condition of development?
Well, I would think that we're making it a condition of development, yes, right? Yes.
Your Worship, I'd say,
It's frustrating with people parking in front of us.
I'd say certainly, I wasn't part of the discussion on this, so I apologize, but certainly if there is off-street parking requirements that they have to comply with, and if that's what they'd be required to do. So that means extending the driveway, provided meets our regulations, they will be required to do that. If not, you'll be hearing.
And they can do that.
What I read is that the development, one of the requirements is that the development must meet the minimum off-street parking requirements in keeping with the minimum 50% landscape front yard requirement.
Right.
But I don't know if that means they have to have a driveway for the subsidiary apartment, and I would think that we must require it.
They would have to for our winter, for our snow pitting regulations. You can't park in the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's fine, as long as that's a space they can use.
Right.
Okay.
So that was my understanding, that they can meet the parking requirements.
Yeah.
The other concern we had was the house to the west of this particular property, and they were concerned about where the entranceway would be with respect to this subsidiary apartment. And if you look at the aerial photograph that's here, what we sort of looked at committee was that it appears to be in the back to the west side of the house in the back. The concern was that anybody in the subsidiary apartment would be walking along that side of the house, which would result in increased traffic along the adjoining property's backyard, and they don't have a fence put up there. So that was a concern by the resident next door. They were concerned about, I guess, the loss of their privacy. My understanding is there was some contact made with the people going to move into 15 Padden Place, and they were very open to, trying to accommodate where they could. So this is what our recommendation is here. We're recommending that the variance request be approved by the 10% variance to the minimum of 13.5 meter frontage in order to allow the approval of the application to go through. But also some conditions here, recommending that the recommendations of the city inspector outlined in this report be met. The development, as you outlined, Your Worship, meeting the minimum off-street parking requirements in keeping with the 50% landscape front yard requirement, which they can accommodate. But we're also suggesting that access to the apartment be provided via the right or the eastern side of the house, because this is the major sideway. And if we could get the tenants of the subsidiary apartment to go down the right-hand side, that would alleviate the concern of the residents on the other side about the increased traffic in their backyard. And also that a fence be erected along the western side, again, to address the privacy concerns. So that's our recommendation, and I so move.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried.
And the next item, Your Worship, is a notice of motion. In accordance with Section 39 of the City of Mount Pearl Act 1988, take notice that I will, at a regular meeting of Council, move an amendment to the text of the Mount Pearl Development Regulations 1988 that, if enacted, will amend the residential use zone tables as follows. In the condition sections of each zone table, add the following. Crescent-shaped driveways shall be permitted, subject to the following conditions. The apex of the inside or roadside edge of the crescent-shaped driveway shall be a minimum of 6 meters from the edge of the curb. The minimum lot frontage shall be 16 meters, and the minimum landscaping requirement shall be 50% of the front yard. The purpose of this amendment is to provide council with the authority to regulate crescent-shaped driveways in residential use zones. And the next item, Your Worship, is the development permit list for May 16th to May 27th, 2011. We have 5 there, and I move that they be accepted as presented.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried.
And the next item, Your Worship, are the building construction permits for the time period of May the 14th to May the 27th, 2011. Residential construction during this time period total $1,356,150, and commercial construction during the same time period total $150,000. That brings the total for this time period to $1,506,150, and I move that these amounts be accepted as presented.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried.
The next item, Your Worship, has to do with a 2-lot residential subdivision at Court Royale Place. The city is in receipt of a subdivision development application for a proposed 2-lot residential subdivision on the southeast end of Court Royale Place, and a copy of the map is attached there. The proposal area is located within the RSU3 residential single unit detached 3 land use zone, and the development is subject to meeting the development standards of this zone. The subject area did not form part of the Pearlview Phase 3 subdivision development, and a separate subdivision development permit and subdivision development agreement will be required for the development of this particular land. In terms of the commentary externally, Newfoundland Power provided commentary on a proposed subdivision, and the development is subject to meeting the requirements of Newfoundland Power. We had our internal commentary as well. The department is recommending that this subdivision development permit be issued subject to the following conditions. They're outlined there, the 5 of them, the RSU3 land use zone requirements. The second is the signing of a subdivision development agreement. The third, Newfoundland Power requirements are met. Fourth, requirements of the City Planning and Development Department as well as our Engineering Services Division. These requirements are met. And of course, the requirements of our Finance Division would also be met, and I so move.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried.
And the last item here, Your Worship, is some good news with respect to the development along Black Marsh Road. The city is in receipt of a subdivision development application dated May the 11th, 2011 from Pinnacle Engineering Limited on behalf of Leopard Canada Limited to develop a 12-lot subdivision to be called the Hillside Living Phase 1A-1. The new developer has acquired the lands of Synergy Executive Properties and wishes to proceed with this phase of the development proposal in accordance with the plans previously approved by Council for Synergy Energy Properties. The proposal includes a development of 12 lots on the beginning of Stonegate Crest, which will end in a cul-de-sac for a period of time, but will be extended in future phases. The total area for the development of this phase is 1.8899 hectares, about 4.7 acres, and this is the first phase of a multi-phase proposal for the lands north of Black Marsh Road. Infrastructure work was undertaken by the previous developer, and the new developer wishes to continue the work and begin to develop 12 adjacent lots to for single-family purposes. For me? Let's hope not. So essentially, this is they're basically picking up the development that Synergy was approved for. So as such, the Planning and Development Department has no objection to the issuance of a development permit for the development of these 12 residential lots. Again, it's Phase 1A1. the Hillside Living Subdivision Development, subject to the 8 conditions that are listed below. 10 in total, and I so move.
Moved, seconded by Councillor Baker. Question or comment?
Question.
Councillor Lane?
Deputy Mayor, just wondering, the original plan for this, I'm just seeing this now actually, but the original plan when Synergy was doing this was that these were going to be large executive type homes nestled away in the trees, clumps of trees around and all this kind of stuff. Is this going to be somewhat of a continuation of that vision, or is this going to be like Mount Carson, just a bunch of little small 50 by 100 houses all crammed on top of one another?
Mr. Yevchik can speak to that, Your Worship.
Your Worship, Councillor Lane, the proposal right now from the developers, and we're in the first phases of their development, is exactly the same proposal that we had received from the previous developer. They are anxious to proceed with at least where the area of the infrastructure currently exists on that basis. This is the first phase, and you notice it's phase 1A-1. Once this starts moving, what they wish to move into is the more long street that's parallel to Blackmarsh Road. I think it's called Pembroke, and they wish to develop that as well. During that process, if there are changes, they will come back, but they haven't indicated that there will be any at this point. They just said, but if there is, we will come back to the city before that. Certainly this phase is no change whatsoever from the previous subdivision proposal we've approved.
So it will be somewhat on the high end.
Yeah, we're hoping it will be, yes. It should be, yeah.
I will call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried.
That's it for me.
And that concludes all committee reports. Next item is new business. We started on my right last meeting. We'll start on the left here. Councillor Tessier.
Yep, just one item. One item on Monday, June the 6th, at Smallwood, the Smallwood Drive soccer pitch, the Mount Pearl Minor Soccer Association is having a Kick for a Cure, in support of breast cancer. And it's the ladies' leagues, the senior women's are playing Felians at 6:45, and the under 16s are playing the under 18s after that as well. So I'd encourage all the residents of Mount Pearl to get out there and support this wonderful initiative, because I know they've put a lot of effort into it. And I look forward to seeing everybody there.
They doing that on the international field, on the big?
Yes, I think
yeah?
so.
Oh.
Yeah. What's that?
See
you in pink. And wear pink, guys. I mean, you can all wear it. Everybody can wear it. It looks
okay.
good.
All right. That's it. Thank you. Councillor Lane. Deputy Mayor?
I have a few items here, Your Worship. Saturday, I was at the, Sunday, at the Reed Centre to bring greetings on behalf of Council for the MS Walk.
Yes.
And it was quite a turnout up there. And
did you walk?
I did not engage in the walk. But again, the troops were rallied, and a lot of people were excited. So, I think the motto was one step at a time. They're determined to try to find a cure for this. And again, the number of people that I met up there who were stricken with this, just recently within the last month, 2 months, or what have you. But I got to say, it was a really feel-good atmosphere at the Reed Centre, and people were very upbeat and positive that they were going to beat this. There was a little chap, I think he was 11 years old, from Grand Bank, and they honored him with an award for the fundraising that he did on behalf of his dad. And I forget how much, I think it was $7,000 or $8,000 that he raised, but I think he knocked on every door in Grand Bank to get some donations. So they brought him here. It was very nice, very heartwarming to see that. And he was doing it for his dad to find a cure. So I just wanted to mention that. They did indicate some other activities that they have upcoming. One is an afternoon tea on July the 13th, and the location will be at the Foreign Room in City Hall in St. John's. They also have a barbecue upcoming in the fall and a Christmas dinner that you could find on their particular website. Mm-hmm. The other thing, speaking with the MMSB earlier on, in last week's telegram, there was a free session this Saturday that the MMSB is offering on backyard composting. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention.
Let's advise Mount Pearlers not to go.
I know, Your Worship, how you feel about that.
That's all we need is more rats. We don't have enough rodents in the city.
We've been composting for the last 10 years.
So you're one of the reasons
at our residence.
So you're one of the
we've
problems.
only seen Hundreds of, I'm just kidding. And again, the whole purpose of this exercise is to educate people as to how to do it properly. To your point, if you don't know how to do it properly, you can attract rodents.
Thank you.
So,
I want
again,
commercial composting at the landfill, and you stop doing that in people's backyards.
1/3 of the garbage is compostable. So by composting in the backyard, we are reducing our tonnage that's going into the landfill, which is reducing our tipping fees. So if you do it properly, it can be successful. And every year, my wife, churns out this beautiful compost and is put into her vegetable gardens, on her flower beds.
That's you.
Pardon me?
I thought you did.
I don't have the green thumb. She has the green thumb. I'm the grunt work. She's the helper. I'm the helper.
You're the guy with the spade.
She's the expert. But again, I just wanted to bring that publicly. So if anybody is, worried about that or would like to learn about it, the MMSB is offering that this weekend. And also,
Stay away from that, Mount Pearl. We're going to get a commercial one for you.
I'll second that.
You'll just have to put it at the curbside, and we'll take it away to the commercial compost.
all right, it'll cost us. And Councillor Walsh made reference earlier to the Focus on Youth Awards, and one of the male, Youth of the Year, Sean Leonard. I just wanted to inform council and the public that Sean, he gave a wonderful speech at the Focus on Youth, and he is just a natural.
Oh.
He won, he's a French immersion student, so French is not his native tongue, but he certainly speaks like a francophone. So he won a speak-off at the school, then he went on to win the regional speak-off, then he was invited to Ottawa last weekend, and he finished first in the country in his speech for all French immersion students from across the land. He ranked number 1. He knocked their socks off apparently up there. So I think it would be fitting if we issued a letter of congratulations from the city to our male Youth of the Year.
I think we did that already.
Yeah, but this is a new. This is
But
this
we'll
is
do
another.
this again.
And I think
Absolutely.
with that, I think he's eligible for a $20,000 scholarship at the University of Ottawa. So
He wants to do it. He wants to be a talk show host. He's gonna follow me now.
Well, there you go.
He can have that in a few years.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to say, from the point of view of public speaking and confidence in front of an audience, this guy is second to none. He's a real charmer, and he's really, really skilled.
Yeah. Oh,
He's got
he's
a
been
lot
in
of
that,
talent.
etc.
Yeah.
I remember him as just a knee high to a grasshopper. So he's really blossomed. So I just wanted to bring that forth, and I would like.
Well, that's good news. I'm glad to hear it.
Absolutely, and that's it for me, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Stoyles.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, I would like for you to send a sympathy letter to the Boone family. Mark Boone passed away last week on
Yes.
Wednesday, and of course Mark was a tremendous volunteer in the community.
Yes, he was.
I served with him on gymnastics back a number of years ago. His wife was a Brownie leader with me, so I've known the family over the years, and I certainly was sad to see him passing away so quickly on the weekend, and I did attend the funeral on Saturday morning. Also, Your Worship, on May 18th, M&L is going to be having a regional meeting in Carvania at Frank's
You must be
Restaurant.
June 18th.
June 18th. We had planned on not having one until September, but what ended up happening was the zonal board had planned a meeting, and they've asked us to come along and tag along because they, I don't know if they didn't have enough, but they wanted some information to go to their members from the zonal board, so it's going to be a joint meeting.
Right.
So it will be at Fong's in Carvania all day on June 18th from 9 to 3. And I wanted to mention that. Also, Your Worship, I had mentioned at our last meeting about the Sports Alliance doing their bingo, and it is taking place on June 8th, and they still have a number of tickets left to sell if anybody is interested in going to bingo. Tickets are $10 each, and we do have tickets here at City Hall if anybody is interested in going. And Your Worship, want to pass along congratulations to Abby Schott, who signed a deal with BBC to manufacture the tweed jacket that's in the current Doctor Who's video and show. And yes, anyway, Doctor Who. Anyway, this is a British series, and this is a local company here in Mount Pearl.
You guys don't know Doctor Who?
You don't know Doctor Who? anyway, we have all the information here. It's exciting news for this company here in Mount
Yeah,
Pearl.
though the Scots are not happy.
The Scots are not happy, but this is a company that has won an awful lot of awards and gotten an awful lot of contracts for making clothing like this, and we just want to say hats off to this local company. They're actually located on Barber Drive and up in, and it's great to see them getting such a great,
Here, here.
so, also, Your Worship, I passed out this evening when I came in, the Mount Pearl Cadets hosted a ladies' night out last Wednesday night. And of course, everybody around the table, all of council supported them personally, and I wanted to pass along a copy of that evening's program with everybody's ad and everything, and certainly was a great night. It was the biggest night that they've had so far. They had a little over 300 ladies come out, and it was great to see them be so successful. The money went in aid of Canadian Breast Cancer Research and CF and other charities, and hats off to all the girls in Mount Pearl Cadets who put so much work into this. And last but not least, Your Worship, I wanted to mention the research magazine that came out from Memorial University. Back a number of months ago, I attended, I guess, a day, or started to be a lunchtime thing, but it was several hours of what they do here at MUN and all the research and everything that they do, and some of the things that they had said that they wouldn't mind partnering with Mount Pearl to do some research when we talked about painting and that on the roads. But they have a magazine, and I wanted to say what a great job that and all the research that's being done here at MUN. Sometimes we don't realise what's done in our own back garden, and it's great to see them get the recognition that they deserve. Apparently, they won an award for this magazine, and want to say hats off to them.
Thank you
That's
very
it, Your
much.
Worship.
Councillor Walsh. Councillor Aker.
Just want to make a quick comment and join with Councillor Walsh and the rest of my colleagues in congratulating everybody involved with the Focus on Youth Awards, not only the winners, but those that were nominated, as well as the people that take the time to make the nominations. They're very key to all this, and there's a lot of hardworking youth in our city. There's also a lot of other volunteers, most of them adults, who step forward and present nominations to the committee, so my hat's off to everybody involved. Special congratulations to Carl and Jackie Golding. You rarely see them, at the events, right? They've been there for 25 years, lots of dedication, lots of support. They're true team players. Jackie's typically behind the stage, and you'll see Carl behind all the electronic gear, producing the music and that, right? So I think 25 years, I wish them all the best and hope that they get another 25 years out of it too. So thank you, Your Worship. That's it.
Thank you very much. Having nothing else to add, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Tessier. We stand adjourned.